In this video demonstration, I'm going to show you how I format music for tablets and why you should too. My name's Elliot Deutsch. I'm a professional composer and arranger from Los Angeles, and I'm a freelance trumpeter. And in my capacity as a freelancer, I've worked with dozens and dozens of bands in the Los Angeles area. And I'll tell you that over the past 10 years or so, they've slowly been adopting the use of tablets as their primary sheet music implement. Not all the situations, but enough of them that most musicians have to own their own tablet, which I'm going to be using the word iPad interchangeably with tablet. While there are Android tablets and potentially other tablets, people are primarily using iPad. So if I say iPad instead of tablet, I'm just using the words interchangeably. So here's the rub. So just about every single situation I've been in that uses tablets for reading music is simply taking music that would have been printed as sheet music and instead loading it into the tablet so that you can, call it up randomly at a gig. There's a lot of advantages that I touched on in my previous video about tablets that I'm going to sort of run by rapid fire right now. The main advantage is that you don't have to bring a stack of music with you to the gig. But also, as someone in the band, it's a lot easier to find a specific song really, really quickly. You know the music's not going to be crumpled. You don't have somebody else's markings on your part. If there are several, in my case, trumpeters, several different trumpeters shuffling through this band, you're not stuck with somebody else's lousy markings. Everybody gets their own copy of their music. They can practice at home. I didn't mention that before, but that's a very real thing. There are so many advantages, but there's some huge disadvantages to tablet playing. First of all, they're very expensive. The largest sort of flagship tablet is the Apple iPad Pro Big, whatever they call it, 12 point something inches. That is just about the size of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of standard letter paper. It's actually smaller than copyists would tell you sheet music should be, but it's getting toward the realm of where it should be, so it's okay. And in fact, most of the music that you end up reading on gigs is printed on loose leaf paper at 8.5 by 11, so that isn't a huge deal, but it should keep in mind. But what is a huge deal is that you can only see one sheet at a time. And that actually brings me to my biggest set of recommendations. All have to do with the fact that you can only see one sheet at a time. And that flipping pages is somewhat cumbersome. Now, people that use tablets all the time for gigs will tell you how easy it is. But I'll tell you that no matter how easy they make it on the tablet, it's still a lot more difficult than flipping an actual sheet of paper. So, if you're using paper music, first of all, you know that people are going to be able to look at least 2 sheets at a time, if not 3, depending on whether you're putting them in a flip book or whether you're printing and taping accordion style. They'll be able to see at least 2, maybe 3 pages at a time, and you can do things with that you cannot do if you're doing it specifically for a tablet. So I guess this is a roundabout way of saying that as long as people are treating tablets as a way to get music that should be on paper just into a tablet, it's never going to be as good of an experience as just reading it off of paper. If you are a band leader or somebody who knows that your musicians are going to be using tablets, you should format it for the medium that it's going to be for. So you should be doing things a little bit differently when you're setting up your parts in Finale or Sibelius to make it as easy as possible for people to read off of their tablet. So with that, I'm going to bring you in to sort of a very extreme example. So there's a cover band that I work with in Los Angeles called That Vibe, and they have this exact same problem that I've been talking about, where the band actually predates you. They've been around long enough that they were using entirely printed parts, and then at some point they switched to tablets, and then sometime later I joined the band, and they sent me a Dropbox of a bunch of charts, and I just loaded them into my iPad and got going. But those predate them using iPads, so they didn't have that in mind when they did it, and they had some problems that made them extremely difficult to use on a tablet. So that said, let's go into Sibelius. Boop. All right, so, well, I'm looking at the score. That's useless. let me flip over to it. All right, so this is a score for the horn parts for Give It To Me Baby, the Rick James song. And I know that this is in a different key than the original, but don't let that hang you up. So here I'm going to go to the trumpet part, but all three of the horn parts are formatted the same way. So first thing you'll notice is that this is formatted in a way that you would never do for printed parts. I mean, first of all, just looking at it at a glance, you can see that the first and third pages are each less than half a page, so this could easily be a 2-page chart. But I want to get you out of the thinking that you had with printed parts and get you into the tablet space. So first of all, the number of pages that your chart takes is inconsequential because you're not printing it. There's no sense in saving paper when you're not printing the chart. So PDF pages don't matter. What you want to do is facilitate easy page turns because you can only see one page at a time. If you can make a page turn be at a multi-rest, then that's what you should do. So in this case, and the only way to understand is to look at this second page. So this arrangement of Give It To Me Baby, and I had the constraint of wanting my parts to line up with the master rhythm section part, which I didn't input into Sibelius when I redid these parts, but it has a DS all coda in it to repeat a verse and a chorus. And I wanted the horn parts to line up so that when the band rehearses, it doesn't get derailed. So in this case, we end up with, I think, 11 systems on the middle page. Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Exactly 10. Okay, so in general, I like to keep a maximum of 10 systems on a page of sheet music and a minimum of 7 if I'm going to spread it out to fill the whole page. If I have fewer than that, then you can, like this page that only has 5 systems, the third page, just don't spread it because that'll make it difficult to read. So this middle one has 10 systems. That's the maximum. So basically, DSL codas you can think of as the enemy of the tablet part. The antithesis of what makes something easy to read is something where you have to flip backwards. You don't ever want to ask your tablet person to flip backwards. The worst thing you can do is actually have, so, like, let's, just for whatever's sake, I'm going to redo this like it might have looked if we were doing it for, yeah, there we go. This looks like it might have been if we were printing it, right? You can see both the sheets at the same time. Everything is laid out nicely. But here's the problem. When you play through to the DSL coda, which is down here, then you'd have to flip back to the previous page. Now it's doable because there's a 16-bar rest, but it makes it really cumbersome, right? Whereas the way I had it before, once you get on, you finish this first page, which is incredibly short, you get to the next page, you're here entirely until you get to the next page, and then you're done. So keep that in mind when you're doing parts for tablet. If you can make fewer page turns, the better it's going to be. So in general, I like to have a multi-rest either before or after a page turn, and oftentimes I've actually gotten the habit of putting a note on the part. So I'd put a 16-bar rest after page turn. Something like this. And then, oh God, I'd put it, right here. So that's actually better than what I had before. So I'll save it. And, if we're going to be consistent, let's do one of these here, and we can do 8-bar rest after page turn for that one. So that's actually even better. So giving little notes so that as someone who reads off of their tablet a lot at gigs, you end up going to the next page, then going back just to see whether there's a multi-rest on the next page or not. More often than not, there isn't, because the parts weren't made specifically for tablet reading. There's no repeated section in this chart, so I can't show you that next thing. But fortunately, I have a different chart queued up that I want to show you guys as well. This is an arrangement that I did of Ghostbusters for this Halloween to play with my polka band, Die Sauerkrauts. Let me grab this up and I'll show you. This was one that I actually did for printing. So this is not specifically for tablet. But actually it's fine the way it is. As you can see, the first page is just a regular page of music. Oh, there's a 2 coda here. So I wouldn't want this DS. So in this case, you play past the end of the first page, go to the next page, there's a 4-bar rest, so that works fine. But then you end up with this DS hall coda right here. So in order to adjust this for tablet reading, I remind you, this is one that was for printing. This band uses flip books or binders, so having 2 pages that face each other is how most of the charts look. But in this case, we'd want all of this on one page, ideally. Now we have too many systems on that page. Let me see how many we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And generally, when you have the title, you want it to be 9 or fewer systems. But I think we can fudge our way toward that if we put all of this on a system. Isn't too bad. Move this DSL coda just down a little bit. Move this, or I guess we can. Then we can put this entire thing onto one system. It's all rests. We can get rid of that indent. Move the title a bit higher. Move this system a bit higher. And now we are getting there. Actually, we can move this title down a little bit. That's looking good. Here we'll just grab all these systems and make them evenly spaced by moving them together. There we go. So now we've got 10 systems on this page, which again is pushing it, but I think it's okay in this case. And then the second page happens at the jump to the coda, but again, the coda starts with a multi-rest, a multi-measure rest, so this isn't a big deal in this case. So those are the changes I'd make in order to make this one tablet friendly. Let's take a look at a rhythm section part. Drum set you can usually compress. So in the case of rhythm parts, a lot of times they don't have rests at all. So then it's a matter of choosing when they'd be able to get a hand off of their instrument to touch their tablet. And in this case, it's probably fine because the drummer in the polka band, Till, was already using a tablet. He refused to use the physical books. So I think I had him in mind when I did this. Yeah, so you can see I did the DS. I did it exactly how I changed the trumpet part. So in this case, his 2 coda is just the page turn, and that's the best that I could do with his part. There's a 1-beat rest, and then there's a page turn. Sometimes that's all you can do, and that just is what it is in this case. A lot of times I'll be able to compress a drum part down to a page, but because there's this very specific groove at letter D. I don't know if the highlights show up in OBS. Let me see. They do. Okay, so letter D has a very specific drum part that I needed him to play, so I wasn't able to compress that all into one system like I might have on a jazz chart. So in this case, it had to be 2 pages, and I think the page turn is where it had to be. So with that said, a few other things to keep in mind when you're doing tablet parts. First of all, this is true for printed parts as well, don't reduce the staff size. So in Sibelius, the default is staff size 7, don't make it smaller. Their default size is actually pretty darn good. I usually leave my music that size and it prints and looks big enough, and on a full-size tablet, of course, it looks big enough as well. You don't know whether your musicians are going to have an iPad Pro Max Extreme 12-inch monster iPad, or if they're going to have the regular original 9-point-something-inch iPad, or even an iPad mini. And so if you make music smaller so that it fits, It might look okay on the giant iPad. That problem is gonna magnify when you get onto smaller and smaller iPads, and become really, really difficult for your poor musicians to read their parts. So really, really try to avoid that. Otherwise, just keep them flipping pages forward. Don't depend on people having a foot switch for their iPad. Eventually, we might get to the point where everybody has a Bluetooth foot pedal, but here in Los Angeles, where tons of people are using their iPads for gigs all the time, I still only see about half of the musicians having pedals with them, and those are usually rhythm section players who literally couldn't get through their music without them. Other people are just playing their instrument and taking one hand off and touching the iPad and keep going. So just don't assume that they have that. Make it easy for them to get through the gig without using a pedal. So that's that. Those are my thoughts. Let me get my face back on the screen. I demonstrated something for the camera that you couldn't see. Let's get myself back. Boop. All right. So some final thoughts. Yeah. Anyway, if you liked seeing this demonstration, definitely click the like button. The thumbs up, sorry. Hit the thumbs up. YouTube uses that for their algorithm, and it really helps me out a lot in terms of getting other people to watch this video. If you haven't subscribed yet, think about subscribing. It doesn't cost you a thing and helps me a great deal. What does cost you a thing and helps me an even greater deal is joining my Patreon. The Patreon support helps me a lot in terms of just motivation toward getting these things done. It takes a considerable amount of effort to come up with topics and think of the right way to present it and what to show you in order to illustrate what I'm doing. And even a video like this that I'm more or less recording in real time still took a lot of planning to get charts up and think about what I wanted to say and this and that. So that's a long roundabout way of saying, think about joining Patreon. It would help me a lot. Well, that'll just about do it for this topic. With that, I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.